I don't remember how I felt. All I remember, I get up, like I said, and I find him in the trash. I wish I knew how I killed him, though.
What began as a whirlwind romance between a former pilot and an aspiring model ended in one of the most shocking and gruesome crimes in California's history. In November 1991, just 1 month after their wedding, Omaima Nelson murdered her husband, William Bill Nelson, inside their Costa Mesa apartment. She then spent the next 2 days methodically dismembering his body and cooking his remains.
She had fried the head in a deep fat fryer, so it was pretty badly.
Omaima Ari was born into poverty in southern Egypt. At the age of 7, she endured sexual abuse and was subjected to forced genital mutilation. Her family later relocated to Cairo's City of the Dead, a cemetery where people lived among tombs. At 18, Omaima immigrated to Orange County, California, with little money and only a limited grasp of English. She worked as a maid and nanny while pursuing unfulfilled ambitions of becoming a model. Financially desperate, she began frequenting bars, targeting wealthy older men, using her appearance to solicit money and favors. It was around this time that she met William Bill Nelson, a 56-year-old former airline pilot who had previously served prison time for drug smuggling. At the time, he was employed at a mortgage company. Bill stood 6'4", weighed 230 pounds, and had a larger-than-life personality. They met playing pool in the fall of 1991. Bill was immediately taken with the 23-year-old's beauty and apparent vulnerability. But Omaima had a troubling past. She had previously robbed and threatened other men, at gunpoint, and extorted them for money.
And she pulled the gun out, and she put the gun to my face and said she wanted, for me to give her money.
Just 2 weeks after meeting Bill, the couple married in Arizona. They then traveled to Texas, where she was introduced to his extended family, which included 5 children and over a dozen grandchildren. The two honeymooned on horseback at his ranch. But, according to Omaima, something changed. She claimed Bill soon became abusive, physically, sexually, and emotionally. On the drive back to California, she alleged that Bill threw her kitten out of the car window simply to hurt her. Then came Thanksgiving night, November 28th, 1991. According to Omaima's account, that night Bill attempted to rape and strangle her. She said she fought back, first striking him with a lamp, then stabbing him repeatedly with a pair of scissors. The attack was so violent that she claimed to have broken her own hand in the process. What followed, however, stunned even the most experienced homicide investigators. Instead of contacting authorities, Omaima began a disturbing and calculated process of dismemberment. She changed into a red dress, red shoes, and red lipstick. Later, she would tell psychiatrists this was part of a ritual, claiming she was descended from ancient Egyptians and that spirits had instructed her to kill and dismember her husband so she wouldn't have to face him in the afterlife. Using knives and various tools, she proceeded to dismember Bill's 230-pound body. His hands were deep-fried in cooking oil. His head, wrapped in foil, was stored in the freezer. Parts of his torso were skinned and hung on wire hangers in the bathroom, resembling meat in a butcher shop. She also castrated him. At one point, Omaima prepared what investigators later called a restaurant-quality meal, using Bill's ribs, coated in barbecue sauce, served on a plate. Other parts of his body were mixed with leftover Thanksgiving turkey and stuffed into garbage bags placed throughout the apartment and in Bill's red Corvette. Neighbors would later report the garbage disposal ran through the night.
Garbage disposal, running and grinding the entire weekend. Like a motor under stress.
Authorities concluded that approximately 130 pounds of Bill's remains were never found.
She stated that she had cooked some of his ribs in the oven, put some barbecue sauce on it, and actually tasted it.
She said it tasted sweet, just like I like it.
On December 1st, 1991, Omaima showed up at her ex-boyfriend Jose's residence, visibly bruised and disoriented. She confessed to killing Bill in self-defense and made a chilling admission. She had dismembered his body, and the remains were still inside Bill's car. She offered Jose $75,000 to help dispose of the evidence. Jose told her he would help, but as soon as she left, he called the police. When officers arrived at the Costa Mesa apartment, what they found was a crime scene unlike anything they had ever seen. Garbage bags filled with human remains were scattered throughout. Bill's hands were still in the fryer. His head, stabbed multiple times, was in the freezer. His torso, skinned and suspended over the bathtub, gave off the stench of death, oil, and cooked flesh. Roughly 130 pounds of his body were never recovered. When asked about the missing remains, Omaima gave a cold, unsettling answer. He's all there. Investigators became suspicious. They noted markings on Bill's ankles that suggested he had been restrained. His wounds did not appear consistent with a sudden struggle. They looked more like the result of a prolonged attack, possibly while he was tied up. One theory emerged. The couple may have been involved in consensual bondage. But once Bill was restrained, Omaima took control, attacking him with a level of violence that suggested planning rather than panic. Medical experts argued that her own injuries likely came not from defense, but from the physical effort required to dismember a body. Her story kept changing. At first, she claimed self-defense. Then, she said she couldn't remember anything. Later still, she claimed she was possessed by ancient spirits and hallucinated two blood-soaked women telling her to kill. And then came the allegations of cannibalism. She told her psychiatrist she had eaten parts of Bill's ribs. At trial, she denied it. When asked why she cooked the meat, she offered no explanation. During the 1993 trial, her defense portrayed her as a deeply damaged woman. They cited her abusive childhood and years of exploitation, arguing she had finally snapped. But prosecutors painted a very different picture: a manipulative predator with a consistent pattern of violence. They noted previous cases where she had tied up boyfriends, threatened them, and stolen from them. The cultural moment didn't help her case. The Silence of the Lambs had just captivated moviegoers. The media quickly dubbed her a real-life Hannibal Lecter. Between the freezer, the photos, and the barbecue sauce, public fascination grew. On January 12, 1993, Omaima Nelson was convicted of second-degree murder. She was sentenced to 27 years to life. Even behind bars, the pattern didn't stop. By the time of her sentencing, she had already gotten engaged to a 70-year-old man she met through prison correspondence. At her 2006 parole hearing, she was denied. At her 2011 hearing, she pointed to that prison marriage as proof of personal growth. She stated, "There were knives in the kitchen. He never felt threatened or endangered in any way." That comment left the parole board stunned. Asked once more about cannibalism, she insisted, "I swear to God I didn't eat any part of him. I'm not a monster." But again, she couldn't explain why she had cooked the meat at all. Then, Bill Nelson's daughter spoke. She told the board her father had invited her to Thanksgiving dinner that year to meet his new wife. Now, she said, "I don't know what the adequate punishment is for a murderer who doesn't even leave a body to mourn. But I do know, you don't let her out." Omaima was denied parole once again. As of now, she remains incarcerated. Her next parole hearing is set for 2026. She will be 58 years old. She says she plans to return to Egypt. The case of Omaima Nelson stands out, not just for how brutal it was, but for how calculated, how ritualistic, and how eerily detached it seemed. It still raises haunting questions. Where does trauma stop and something far darker begin? More than 30 years later, the case continues to disturb, puzzle, and horrify.